you considered the messages your outfits send? What do you think your clothes say about you? See, style is about the clothes, but it's not really about the clothes. Every day you make choices about what you're going to wear, but what are you communicating? Welcome to Above and Beyond Style. I'm your host, Maria DiLorenzo, and in 2019, I founded MFD Style, where I provide a unique, intuitive approach to personal styling for those ready to embrace a more meaningful look. With this podcast, I'll uncover key elements of where spirituality, psychology, and style intersect, revealing how you can make intentional wardrobe choices that reflect who you really are. So let me ask you, are you ready to transform into your authentic self? Then it's time. Come with me on this journey, and together we'll take your style above and beyond style. Hey friends, welcome back to Above and Beyond Style. This is, I think I'm getting close to the end of this season about style pitfalls and some of the things that get us off track from authentic style. And where it's led me, it's funny, I was thinking about the beginning of this season, 10 or so episodes ago, and was just reflecting on, I didn't know exactly how this season would evolve and what would the lessons and the learnings and the takeaways be from this theme. And so it's funny that I went even beyond, went further than I would have even thought I would have started with. And I'm excited because it's led me to kind of this reflective place that also I think can be informative for you and helpful for you as you continue to consider, is there anything or are there behaviors or things that perhaps get in the way of really kind of curating and identifying an authentic style for you? And hopefully this whole season has given you some different behaviors to be considering, and maybe even some techniques and practices that can help counteract some of those behaviors so that you can kind of get back on track. But I also felt like it was worth exploring maybe on a little bit deeper level. So I'm kind of intending to go maybe a little more psychological in this episode as I talk about authentic style and some of the things that distract us. And before I get on to this whole topic, I do want to do a little check-in with you around my style resolution. And my word for this year is vibrancy. And I've been trying to kind of come back to this every other episode-ish, just so that you can hear how it's kind of evolving and working within my own life. And it's been fun to kind of notice all the different ways it's taken shape. And if you haven't listened to the beginning, I picked this word that I was going to be using as kind of like my guidepost for the year to inform and influence my style. And it started off very simply about like, where could I infuse more vibrancy into my style? Where could I feel more connected and kind of ignited about my style that would be reflective of some of the other life decisions that I've been making? This again, not to be repetitive, but if you're catching up, I've kind of done a lot of different life transitions over the last several months, and I'm amidst them, and I want to talk more about them going forward, which I will. We'll get to that. But the beautiful part of this vibrancy conversation has been the ways that it has been influencing more than just my style. And I think that's been really fun to see how that's evolved, because I don't know that I really anticipated that from the beginning. I set the intention of using this word to help inform and influence my clothing and how I was getting dressed, and maybe some of the decisions around my shopping behaviors or things like that. But it's really grown to be much wider, and I've loved that. I've loved to see how it feels very much like my life has taken on this commitment to vibrancy. And like I say on many things, like my clothing is just kind of along for the ride. And it's been fun to sort of see how that's evolved. In fact, just this last week, I was exploring the coastal Connecticut area for potential to live. I had visited to a couple different towns 6 or 7 months ago and had my eye on a couple cities and towns in coastal Connecticut, and felt like I wanted to go back because I wanted to go there with an intention for just feeling into like, could I see myself living here? Is this some place that might be of interest to me? How might that look or feel? So I went to coastal Connecticut and spent some days in Essex. That was kind of where my home base was, but I was kind of all over the place in all the various neighboring towns along the coast and upward a little bit north of Essex too. And while I was there, I had a lovely friend join me who has actually been on the podcast. So she is not a stranger to you if you've been listening to me for a while. My friend Lindsay, who similarly is kind of blowing up her life, which is kind of fun and magical in all those ways. She has just moved to Arizona and is really moving forward with her spiritual business. And it's been so fun to come back with her. I hadn't actually been in her presence or seen her since last summer, so it was really fun to spend some time with her. She was on the East Coast, and we had a chance to spend a few days together exploring Connecticut and telling all our stories and doing all this. Well, of course, while we're together, we're going to spend a little bit of time shopping, right? I mean, do you know me? Do you know what I like to do? So we went into one of these lovely stores right in Essex. If you've ever been, it's just like straight out of the Notebook of Stars Hollow. If you follow Gilmore Girls, it really feels like that place once you're there. It's kind of bizarre, but also really beautiful and fun. And so we were in one of these shops, had a ton of fun just kind of poking around in all these different places. And we came upon this one store that just had like an incredible influx of dresses and tops. And I mean, the assortment of clothing was really fun to kind of poke around. But I was really drawn to, again, I'm thinking about this word vibrancy, right? And I'm like, how do I want vibrancy to really be living out in my wardrobe? And I've talked to you before about the use of color, and I really am a neutrals girl when I really get to my heart. Like, I love a good neutral look, monochromatic, all that. But I've been experimenting more and more with color, and especially going into spring and summer, where I feel like color is kind of a really fun way of reflecting what is happening in nature. So I went into this boutique and found, of course, this lovely blazer, which was a neutral background, which of course is what drew me, but it had this amazing, fun window pane check print that was in these bold, beautiful colors, like hot pinks and oranges and Kelly greens and royal blue. And it just was just this assortment of color. And it was funny because my style tends to read a bit classic. I talk about it like classic with the flair. Like, there's something always a little special about the way that I interpret classic style, kind of more traditional shapes. But I like to do it with all those kind of detail work, whether it's like the pin tuck of something, or it might be a special button or a twist or some little something that's going to make it special. Well, this in particular felt like an item that really stood out in this vibrancy space because of the color palette, of course, but it was like a very traditional kind of Maria look. And so I put it on, and Lindsay's with me, and I walk out of the dressing room and she's like, ah, love it. So of course I was feeling the very same way about it before she'd even had a reaction. And it just confirmed in some ways like how vibrancy really is that guiding word for me right now. And as soon as I put it on, I felt that vibrancy in my body, and I was just like, this feels like me. And it also feels exciting to wear, and it just very much reflected kind of the energy of not just the weekend that I was having with her, which was super fun, but also this kind of energy that I'm moving forward in my life with. And so I think it's just so fun to see how this style resolution is kind of coming into my world and into my life in all these new and different ways. So I don't know how you're doing. If you committed to a style resolution at the beginning of this year, or maybe you want to pick one up now. Like, there's nothing that needs to be said. It has to be done at the beginning of a calendar year. I just happen to be thinking about resolutions. And of course, I'm always thinking about style. So I kind of put those two things together. But I'm wondering for you if there is any kind of style resolution that you would like to commit to or have been committing to, and how are you doing? Like, are you feeling like the word or the phrase or whatever that you sort of wanted to commit to, is it playing out as you thought? Or are you being inspired by it? Are you finding it helpful as you're getting dressed or making perhaps decisions on purchases to use that as your kind of token, to kind of go back to it and say, oh, is that the thing that's helping me make these choices better? And is it keeping me aligned with my authenticity? And I am curious about that for you. And if there is interest, maybe you didn't do that however many months ago and you'd like to start, please use this as like my invitation, if you will, to think about how your style and maybe a word or a phrase or something could really help guide you and really support you as you're maybe thinking of changing up your style or giving it a little burst of something new or creativity, or just giving you maybe that little burst of something. And I love that sort of parallel image and the metaphor with spring and like the bursting of flowers and things are growing again. Like, it just feels like those things could go really hand in hand. So maybe you need a spring style resolution. At least it's springtime here where I am and when I'm recording right now in the United States. So that's my update on my style resolution. And as I mentioned at the beginning of this episode, I really felt like I'd like to spend a few minutes at least kind of talking a bit more maybe in the psychology behind what's getting us off track from authentic style. I've tried to give you a variety of different behaviors through this season that I think can sometimes get in the way, or that perhaps takes us down a path that we maybe weren't intending. And so we're standing in front of our closets or opening drawers and we're looking at these clothes, maybe feeling like this isn't really me, or it's unrecognizable, or it's just not really motivating you any further. Or you don't feel inspired by your clothes any longer. This happens to all of us at different phases of our life. And so part of what I'm hoping to do is give you at least some strategies or some things to think about that may be at play for you. And if you can start to intercept them in a way that could get you back on track, then that feels like a really good use of our time together in this season. But it did occur to me when I didn't really say this from the beginning, but I have been using this phrase of like getting off track from our authentic style. And it made me realize that there may be some of you out there that are feeling like, well, gosh, I don't ever know if I was really ever on track with my authentic style. So getting off track would necessitate that there was a track I was on to begin with. And that may not be the case for you. And I feel like it's important to honor that if that is this kind of sentiment that you might really feel is at play for you. That many clients come to me with that sentiment of, I don't even really know what my authentic style is, or I don't have the characteristics or the understanding of what it feels like to really be connected to my clothes. And so I guess it's important maybe to ask yourself that question. And if you felt like you really weren't on track to begin with, then I can see perhaps that might feel like an insurmountable challenge, right? Like that's a kind of a big thing if you've never really had a sense of your own style or having a real grasp or understanding of it for yourself, then there's not really much to get off track from, right? It's sort of the story that you've always been on. And in some ways, I hope that this podcast gives you maybe not always the like actual steps to take to build an authentic style and wardrobe. I think it's always going to be individualized and personalized, so it's really hard to do that kind of in a blanket scenario. But I do feel like these conversations, particularly in season 1, if you haven't listened to me from the beginning, I feel like season 1 really set up kind of all the different ways that clothing can help us in our life and can really be an extension of who we are and what we're about. And I think in that self-discovery process, we get clearer and clearer about then what are the clothes or what are the wardrobe choices I should be making that are reflective of who we are and what we really want to be about and how we want to show up for our lives, right? So there's kind of this cyclical connective point between clothing, who we are, and how we want to show up. So if you feel like you've never really been on track with your authentic style, I want to honor that for you. I also want this maybe to be an invitation that it would be great to work with you, because my business is about helping people try to get a better semblance of what that means for them and try to get some words and some language that can help support that, but also then like the practical aspects of like, well, then how does that actually get implemented? Meaning you might learn certain style approaches or have certain language or tactics, etc., kind of in your pocket. But what is the actualization of that in your life? Like implementing some of those things to apply to your life and your personality and in your wardrobe. I've had several clients tell me before that like, I see other people doing it, but like, I don't know that I am doing it or that I can really apply it to my life. And that hurdle might be difficult to overcome on your own. And that's where hiring someone like me as a stylist might actually be very helpful for you. So I want to just offer that as a solution. If you feel like you've never really been on track with your style, this might be the right way to kind of really get back on track and really have a place to begin. The other thing I wanted to mention about the way, again, I talk about getting off track, or what are these pitfalls that distract us or take us down a different path. I want to honor the other thing that I don't know that I've spent a lot of time talking about, is that I think we all have a lot of other competing priorities in life. And the more I get exposed to more clients, even just in relationship with other human beings, I get more knowledgeable about all the things that we're trying to not just accomplish in a day, but consider and be thinking about and keep sort of operational, from the basics of like keeping the trains moving in our day-to-day lives to, maintaining relationships and working and love and like all these various factors of life. And I have really realized with many clients that I hear that struggle of competing priorities, and identifying and working with their wardrobe or their style sometimes just doesn't rise to the most, to the top of the pile, so to speak. And I can understand that this conversation around clothing and style could feel a bit shallow or maybe surfacey. And it's like, gosh, I have so much else to be thinking about in my day and my life than what kind of clothes I'm going to put on my body. And so authentic style may not feel resonant to some people. And it feels like, of all the things I've got to really focus on, this isn't one of them. And I'm not saying that to be dismissive of this work, because if you know anything about me, you know how important I feel about, or how important it is for me to help share the story of how clothing can be a tool to help tell the story of who we are. It can be a communication tool. It can be a method for us to express ourselves so that other people can know who we are beyond just the words we speak or the body language that we have, etc. That's a whole other topic for that I had in other episodes, so gladly refer you back to those. But I really feel it important to acknowledge that for some people, wardrobe just isn't kind of the highest priority. My goal for you, if that does feel somewhat resonant for you, is to try to see wardrobe not as this unnecessary kind of evil in your life, or maybe the necessary evil in your life, but that it could be something that actually could enhance your life, your lifestyle, your relationships, how you show up in your life. And so connecting then to the authenticity component of that, of it being like true and really expressive of you, not just like walking into a store and getting dressed from the mannequins and it's like, I'll take A, B, and C. Great. I know it all coordinates. It all works. It's in my size, done. Yes, some people get dressed that way. And I suppose for efficiency's sake, I don't have an argument with that. But I also want and wonder if you are willing to kind of go down the path of giving a little thought and consideration to it, how it might feel to actually embrace an authentic style and to know that some of the things I've talked about this season can get us off track and get in the way and can distract us, or again, are things that are not allowing us to really come to that fullest expression of authenticity in our style. And so for you, I'm curious about how does this sound when I'm talking about this whole concept of authentic style. I don't know if everybody always really resonates with that phrase or that term. Maybe it feels a bit too out there, kind of abstract, or, maybe the authenticity piece feels a little too close or too intimate or too vulnerable. And I think in part that is why I'd like you to start to kind of bring it in a little bit and nudge up next to it and kind of get close and figure out like, well, what does that mean for me? And how does that really get to play out in my life in a way that could be wildly fun and actually be just another way I get to share who I am with the world? Because I think in so many ways, that's what clothing has done for me. And not to sound sappy about it, but I do feel emotional about how wardrobe has been this kind of character along for the ride in so many different aspects of my life. And I think I was dismissive of it for a long time because I did feel like it was maybe a little shallow, or like I said, surfacey, or maybe it felt like, I don't know, just not as important, or of all the ways to know me or express myself or whatever. It felt like clothing was like, this is silly. Why am I even trying to make it a parallel with like getting to know me as a person and all my characteristics? And I think it was easy to dismiss. And I have learned to embrace this in a different way. Part of the reason why I feel so passionate about being on this podcast and educating and giving you this opportunity to think differently about clothes is because I've done that too. And I've really come to this place where I appreciate how my clothing helps me show up for my life. And it is enabling me in a lot of ways to do some really hard, risky things. As you well know, that I've sold my condo. I am in a kind of interim place living with a good friend while I'm exploring a variety of different places and towns to live. I'm going to do some traveling. I am not living kind of the quote unquote normal life. And I really feel like my wardrobe has helped me come into authenticity about that in doing some of these things in my life. And it can do that for you too. And so this conversation around authentic style for me comes from a place of doing it. It's not a past tense thing. It's not even a future thing. It's like present tense. I'm actively in progress using my clothing and my wardrobe to help me stay connected to who I am and how I want to show up in the world, and having a little fun, like I said, about utilizing this style resolution and implementing some new ways of being more vibrant in my expression of style. And that's just been kind of the way I've been approaching this. So I hope that this has given you some food for thought, and I'm going to make a listener request. I am so grateful, first of all, to all of you that have been listening to this podcast, maybe even from the beginning, or you're still catching up, wherever you are in the process. I'm grateful you're here. I'm grateful you've picked this up and decided it was worthy of your time to consider and think about while you're living your life. And one thing that I've never really done before, but I would be very interested to know, is if you would write to me in an email. I'm going to give you my email address. I would love to know what, if any, you feel like might be your style pitfalls. What are the things that you feel like gets you off track from really having that authentic style, or maybe gets in the way? Or if you never were really on track, why do you think that was the case? It's so interesting to me to hear people's stories. And I, of course, have the privilege of doing that with my clients, but not everyone I interact with is a client of mine. And I know that there are many of you on the listener end of this who maybe we've never even met. And so I don't know that we've had the opportunity to have those kind of conversations. So would you do me the honor of sending me an email and giving me some of that feedback? Tell me what your style pitfalls are. What do you think gets you off track from having your authentic style? Or if you never really were on track, why do you think that's the case? I am eager and curious to hear your stories or your responses. And I'd like to share that anonymously with you, other podcast listeners, and talk more about that, because I think we could really benefit from that collective conversation. So please do me the honor of sending me an email. It's Maria, Maria, at mfdstyle.com. That's it. Super simple. Send me an email. As I said, I promise it will remain anonymous as I talk about it on the pod, but obviously I'd love to interact with you and hear your responses. So that is my little call to action for you today. Friends, thanks again for listening. And until next time, I look forward to speaking with you then. Hey there. I wanted to take this opportunity to tell you more about MFD Style, my wardrobe consulting business. I've been styling professionally for nearly 15 years, and it truly is my life's passion and purpose. In fact, my mission is to help you develop a confident and authentic signature style, breathe life into your existing wardrobe, and help you fill in with perfect, versatile pieces that are in line with your style and budget. And yes, all of this can be done both in person or virtually. This experience can transform your life. I have seen it happen countless times. And all you have to do is take that first step. Set up a free 30-minute consultation call with me, and we can start this journey together. You deserve to have a wardrobe that mirrors who you are, and I am so ready to help make that happen. You can find me on the web at mfdstyle.com. Thanks so much for listening today. If you enjoyed what you've heard, I would appreciate you taking the time to leave a review on the podcasting platform you're using, and share this episode with others who you think might really enjoy these conversations about personal style. For more information all about MFD Style services, you can find me on the web at mfdstyle.com, on Instagram at mfd_style, where I post almost 5 days a week, or send me an email at maria@mfdstyle.com. I also have a weekly email I send to subscribers, so I will include the link to that sign up in the show notes. So until next time, friends, remember to love yourself and then love yourself some more.